Important when it comes to the job application, it's not about showing everything you are, your whole life, everything that like makes you and your whole experience. It's about being very selective. It's about concluding to the role they're looking for. You're applying for a specific role, so that means you should only show the elements that are necessary to do the role. Hi, and welcome to the TD Meetup. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm a technical director for visual effects, animation, and games, and I worked at companies like VFX and Framestore on Avatar: The Way of Water and Monsters at Work. Hey everyone, welcome to the TD Meetup, and today we would like to talk about visual effects job applications. Last time we talked about visual effects job security. Now that we established how we can stabilize a little bit our financial and job situation, today we want to see how we can increase the chances of getting the next gig, the next job, or maybe even our first job in the whole process. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm a technical director and coach in visual effects, animation, and games, and I worked at VFX on Avatar: The Way of Water and Shang-Chi, and previously also at Monsters at Work, at Framestore and Macrovision and other companies, studios all around the world. And I specialize especially on pipeline technical directing, lighting, and a few other areas that kind of concludes especially in the technical directing side. When it comes to the job application, we first need to talk about the process. So every time you apply for a job, there is a process involved, and it's mostly set up in 3 steps. And these 3 steps are the job application in itself. This includes the CV, the showreel, the cover letter, and to some degree, all your social media, because that's part of what people like look up at, especially nowadays where the access to social media is so easy. So people are able to see more and in more depth of who you are specifically. The second part is the interview. So after the recruiter finds you as a suitable candidate, they will reach out to you and schedule an interview where we talk in person. And finally, there is the contract negotiation to make sure that the payment is okay, all the parts of the contract like holidays and vacations and like some extras, maybe overtime, are set up correctly so everyone's on the same page before you can actually start working at a job. What we will focus for today is the job application parts of the documents, so the first part of that. And the most important thing is to understand what's the purpose of each of these parts, because then we can make sure that we deliver on what the recruiter and the studio is looking for when they, for example, look at our CV. What is the purpose of the CV? And the idea of the CV is mostly about experience and time. So when the recruiter looks at a CV, what they want to see is all the experience neatly like presented, so they know how much experience you have, where do you work, how long did you work, what is the overall time for you in the experience that you did in this specific role. If you're applying for a rigging TD role, how long are you a rigging TD? Where did you work as a rigging TD? How long, with how many people, in which studios, on which projects? So it's basically a summary of all experience connected with time. When we look at the showreel, it's about our actual skills. How good are you as an animator? What did you do? Which work did you do? What is the skill set that you have? Do you know some Python maybe? Do you know this kind of element? So in the showreel, we can actually show the particular skill and convince the other side that we can do the job that they're looking for. And we can also maybe do the exact things that they're looking for. So if we are working on animation shots in animation films and they're looking for an animator for animation films, then we can show that and it aligns more with what they're looking for. The next part is the cover letter. Some people might say it's like, oh, do we need that? And so on. To some degree, the best way to describe the purpose of a cover letter is to see it as the unveiling of hidden strength and goals. So at the end of the day, what the cover letter does is to help your CV and your showreel. And in most cases, it has the most importance when your CV and showreel are maybe not good enough or not pulling the weight of the application enough, where you feel like, oh, I'm maybe not qualified enough compared to what the job application is looking for. So you can, with the cover letter, you can basically show some things that you cannot show in the CV and your showreel. Maybe you didn't do the project, but you have something on the back burner you're working on, or some skills that could be helpful, but there's not much to show about. So it's basically the last way of convincing that you are the right person. That's the cover letter. The more qualified you are, the less it's necessary. But sometimes it can be even a thing where you can make a statement how you are connected to the studio you're applying for. And last but not least, we have social media, something that sometimes is skipped, but nowadays, again, it's so easy to access people's social media accounts. It gives more detail. You can look into posts of someone, smaller projects and elements that, connect all the tissues that were mentioned before. Important when it comes to the job application, it's not about showing everything you are, your whole life, everything that makes you and your whole experience. It's about being very selective. It's about concluding to the role they're looking for. You're applying for a specific role, so that means you should only show the elements that are necessary to do the role. It also not only makes it easier for the recruiter in the studio to understand if you're capable to do what they're looking for, it also makes it easier for them to think you are really good at what you're doing, because what they see is, for example, only animator elements, only rigging elements, only Python elements. And then they can conclude, okay, this person was working for 6 years as a rigging TD, 3 years as an animator, and so on. And they can only look at the things that are relevant to the job. And that's very important, because at the end of the day, the most common mistakes I see with most job applications in visual effects, animation, and games is that a lot of people include things that are not necessary or really relevant to the role, and then they kind of create a lot of noise on one side, and they don't emphasize on the element that really matters for the job, and then kind of lose a little bit of the track to be relevant for the person in terms of oh, this could be a hireable applicant. Let's start with the first element that we apply with is the CV. And there's different types of CVs. There's, you can find online hundreds of templates and so on. The most important thing are always the same, but there's also difference in terms of regions. So if you are applying in US or Canada, they have a little bit of a different CV style compared to in Europe, compared to in certain areas of Asia. So be aware where you apply, because that can change at least the style of your CV and kind of a little bit the focus. But there's some important elements that are true independent if you apply in New Zealand or US or in Germany or wherever, because they focus on the same delivery of, are you the best person for the role? So when it comes to CV, when the most important thing, as I just mentioned, is to be relevant. Only show experience that are relevant to the role. What really convinces the other person that you have the years of experience, the skills, the elements that make up to do the job that they're looking for, be it in lighting, being in compositing, be it whatever. So at the end of the day, the importance of a CV is not to show your whole life, it's to show the life that is relevant to the job application. And everything else is either removed or shortened to, the minimum, basically. The other part is to see a CV as an Excel spreadsheet. So basically, it's not an art project or something. It's very pure on data. Again, it's about experience and time, and that's in a very simple matter. So keep your CV very simple as possible. So make it very easy to digest and read and understand, because that's the important part, because there's so much data going on. So easy to read is very important, and avoid to make it over designing, making graphics and colors and all the stuff to make it too complicated at the end of the day. In terms of delivery, the rule of thumb is to keep it to 1 to 2 pages. It depends also again on the circumstances. For example, if you are more senior, there's a good point to make that you have more experience that you need to show. So 2 pages or even more could be suffice. If you are more into US, it's more typical to be on 1 page because the way it's formatted, it's more, clumped together and compact. So 1 page is the more typical there, where in Europe 2 page is also okay depending on your role. So there's a little bit of a depending on the context situation, but the rule of thumb is start with 1 page if you can deliver it. Most cases, if you are beginner, intern, junior level, 1 page should be the best way to go. If you are more experienced, then more are absolutely possible. Also keep it simple, make it a PDF, no docs files or something like that. And also create a PDF from a docs file, not a Photoshop file or something, because it allows you to add links into that. People can click on it, and people can also use elements like the email address or the website and just open it without, typing it off and creating mistakes on that way. If we would compare how not to do a CV and how to do a CV, this would be the comparison here. So on the left side, this is how it is basically the opposite of what just talked about, and the right side is just a simple kind of Excel spreadsheet CV that we want. So what are the problems with the left side? So first thing, it's kind of an art project. There is a lot of colors, there's gray, there is a lot of banners and so on. Everything is like aligned. It feels like it was done in some Photoshop or something like that. And it kind of breaks the whole simplicity of the thing. And if you think about it, what the danger of doing it this way is, first, what happens if someone doesn't like the art that is presented? What happens if someone is confused by the structure of that? Because there's a lot of elements to get track of, and someone looks at that and misses crucial information because there's so much colors and a balance that has to be done. So the more you do this way, the more you have to be really good in designing. And there's a case to make, maybe you are a designer and this is what you should do. But at the end of the day, the CV is not about your design skills. Even if you are a designer, your showreel and your portfolio is about your design skills and the skills that you have. This is about just facts. This is about your experience. So it should be as simple as possible. So keeping this, the basic minimum kind of Excel spreadsheet element makes it just easy to digest, and also a lot of other things, like it's very easy to print. If you use the right side, there are not many colors or something, while if you print the left one, it will be a disaster. And if you know HR and recruiting, they print a lot. So it can create a lot of problems if we use the left side or try to print that. And also in terms of information, just from what you see, first one, the experience is not even on the first page. So priority wise, the most important part is actually missing, because at the end of the day, we hire someone because of the experience. It doesn't matter what they do. We want to know that they did it before. So if you hire a rigging TD, the first thing they want to know, did they do the job that I want them to hire for? If yes, great, because if I hire them, they know what to do because they did it before. And so in this case, for example, we don't even see experience. We see software and education, but it's probably on the next page that we see the actual experience that matters the most. So also in terms of priority, there's a big issue going on here. So if you look on the right side, it's very simple: name, role, contact, and then we have a few extra information, and we jump instantly to experience. The second most important, education, and then additional skills and extras, basically like events, publishings, and hobbies. And that's it. And you can see here, we can put it on 1 page. Depending on the elements, we can remove it. Maybe we don't have awards, or we can shorten the skills and so on, format it in a way that it's easily on 1 page. And then when we grow, becoming more mid, senior, lead roles, we can also add additional pages if necessary, basically, and make this a more sophisticated CV. In terms of relevance, here's an example which I found on LinkedIn. This includes, sometimes LinkedIn is kind of a secondary CV, so this is a good example for that. So I see also if you don't have much experience, and in this case, I think it was someone who was a 3D artist, but that was the experience that was actually shown. It was like infographics, freelance, cashier at the McDonald's, and technical informatics at Orange, which is for internet provider. And so if you think about if the title would be in the role of the person who was applying would be 3D artist, and that would be the free experience, and you would as a recruiter see that, and you would hire someone for a 3D artist in your basically studio, you would say, how is that relevant? How is any of that relevant to the role? So if you think about infographics, yeah, maybe to some degree, but not really. Cashier, not at all. There is no connection to this job, basically. And in IT, basically, to some degree, I can see that a little bit, because at the end of the day, we work with computers, we work with servers and problems in that direction. So there is a point to make a little bit for the last one, but the rest, especially the McDonald's cashier, definitely has no purpose in that, because it doesn't really elevate anything and it distracts from everything else. And there is a point to make to say, what happens if I don't have any experience? That means you have to, first thing, create experience, even maybe they're not professional, but private experience. And second one, that means you have to elevate your educational experience, your university experience. Maybe you have a degree in visual effects, or your additional master classes like Python master classes, 3D master classes, and then you can elevate. If you don't have experience, you don't have experience. There's nothing you can do besides getting the experience. But it's better to emphasize on the experience that you have that are relevant than highlighting experience that have no meaning to the job application and basically are noise in your CV, in your LinkedIn profile, and so on. So this is basically where the relevance comes in. If we look at this example, and I would give you feedback in one of my coachings or mentorings, let's say we have this as a CV cut off in the middle, and we look at it and see what we have here. So first thing, there's the name, John Doe, okay, and then there's first professional summary. Some people do that, totally fine. A motivated and passionate 3D artist with a proven ability to develop a high quality, lifelike animations, rigging, as well as having a solid understanding of game art and processes. Possessing the artistic expertise and technical ability required to work closely with the designers to create visually stimulating content will intensify game playability, and so on and so forth. If we read this, we all instantly know, okay, this is basically very generic. If I would put that into yours, mine, or anyone's CV, it wouldn't make any changes, because we can apply that. That means there is nothing in there that's individual to that person, so it doesn't add anything. So if we would remove it, or if we put it in, it doesn't make a difference. So rather remove it than having it. So if you write something like a summary or statement or something like that, make sure it adds to the rest of the information. It has some details about you, specifications. So for example, if you're rigging TD, you are great with humans rigging, or with assets or something like that for game engines. There was a little bit game and stuff in there, but not too much to make it interesting. The next one is about experience, rigging. That's great. And then we have some contact information, and then skills, creative solutions, image editing, rigging, animation, and so on. So if I would give feedback to that one, the first thing that I would say is, I would notice the low resolution image converted to PDF. So this is not, the original graphic is not how, because I zoomed in or something, this is really how it looks like. It's very pixelated because it was originally made in a low res image and then converted to PDF. So it was really hard to read. So that's very avoidable. Also, because it was an image before, it was not clickable and not selectable. There was no position or role in the whole PDF. There was just a name, but no clear John Doe rigging artist, for example. There was a lot of typos, which is actually one of the biggest problems I heard for a lot of recruiters. If there's too many typos, it starts to become like, someone doesn't care. The summary was generic and obviously didn't provide any additional information. We could use it in anyone's CV and it will still work. It was too much of a color, which can be distracting and also not great for print, and too many and unprioritizing skills were there that were not really helpful, because creative solutions, okay, image editing, and then the third one was actually the rigging element, which should be the first if we are applying, for example, for a rigging artist role. At the end of the day, the CV is probably the first or second thing the recruiter will see, so it's important that we are very clear about this is our name, this is our role, and this is the experience that we have to make sure that we are the right candidate for that. And that's the idea here, to make sure that when we present a CV, it's about that we present a CV that connects to the role we are applying for. The second part is obviously the showreel that shows the skills, and it's pretty straightforward. We basically collect what we have, all the videos, and even if we have Python code, we record a video of how the Python code helps with the process at the end of the day. So what's important for the video? At the beginning and at the end, there should be a title card with our name, the role, and contact details. Very important, because we kind of set the stage of what this video is about. It should be less than 2 minutes. It can even be 1 minute. Less is more in this case. Like a 30 seconds kick-ass project is more important than 2 minutes of mediocre things, or like 30 seconds great and then 1.5 minutes like boring. So it's more about showing that you can do the job than showing that you can do the job 20 times, or showing that you can do the job and 5 other roles too. So it's very important to stay focused and relevant to that, but show the best work. That's the most important thing. Uploading on Vimeo is more like, I would suggest more than YouTube, because you can re-upload videos, so you don't have to set a new link in a video, and it's usually better quality than YouTube. Also, important is to have the showreel very easily accessible, like on LinkedIn, on your website, or somewhere, for example, in your CV and cover letter and so on. So people are having an easy time to find it if they want to find it at all. So in terms of content, obviously everything inside the showreel should be role relevant. So it should not be you are applying as a lighting artist and there's some animation and some modeling and some directing and so on. It should be lighting. If you want to add something like Python, that should be related to lighting. So if you show some Python scripts or skills, you show some lighting art, and then you show maybe how you help with the Python elements in there. And at the end of the day, it should be focused on, I can do the job if you hire me. That's the idea, basically. Obviously, team projects are always better than solo project, but sometimes we have no choice, so we create something. That's fine. But if you have the opportunity to work with others, maybe even, a hobby project or something like that, it's always good. Not only the qualification of different departments stacked together, but it just shows that you can work in a team. We should make sure that we show which software we use, so people understand, oh, they hire Maya Lighter, and you did Maya projects, so people know what you do. Very important to be transparent, to be clear about the task that you show. So if you do all aspects, mention that, or if you just do the lighting or the lighting of the background, it's very important to be very clear what kind of skills you show at the end of the day. And final tip, show your best work first and the second best work last, because at the end of the day, what we go out of something, that's how we feel about it. So sometimes a lot of people start with the best, second best, third best, and so on, and then the worst is the last one. But that's the last impression that we get from the showreel. So it's always a good idea to kind of end with the last work. But at the end of the day, make sure that the quality overall is the same. And if something doesn't match, either try to upgrade it to match or remove it, because at the end of the day, it's better to not have something than have something that kind of poisons the whole showreel and, kind of shows less quality than the rest of the results at the end of the day. And then the third part is our cover letter. As I mentioned, it's all about, showing the extra, something that you cannot see in the CV, cannot see in the showreel. convincing a little bit about attitude and perspective and so on. So that's the idea here. So I highly recommend to add a cover letter, especially in the beginning. That helps you to, give a little bit of context to yourself and maybe convince someone even if you are not 100% qualified for something. This is the structure that I generally recommend to follow when it comes to the cover letter. Basically, you start with a greeting, then a summary, and the summary is all about how you are the best for the role. So if they're looking for lighting TD, summary is basically, my name is Alexander Richter. I'm a lighting technical director for the last 3 years, and I worked on this, and I can do this, and so on. So it's basically like a statement that connects you and the role, and that's summary. And then what follows is more details about your experience. How does it make you a great lighting technical director? What experience did you have? You worked on Avatar with the Way of Water, you created, Python, you worked in this kind of environment, you did this research, and so on. So you basically give a little bit detail to the summary to make it clear why you are a great lighting technical director, rigging technical director, and so on. And then more or less at the end, you connect, how are you connected to the studio, how much do you know about them? What interests you in that? The more or the bigger the studio, the more prestige it is, like ILM or Pixar, Disney, and so on. The more this is important because it shows interest in not only the work, but also the environment itself, and just at the end, some last words. So that's basically it. And it definitely needs some practice to do that well. So just because you have the structure, that really helps, but to make it your own and personal, that can be a struggle. So take your time with that and make sure that you write something that is personal and not too generic that you can just copy paste to someone else and it would be the same at the end. So the more personal it is, the better. But at the end of the day, what the cover letter is about is to convince about your qualification to the job. And last but not least, sometimes a little bit forgotten, but pretty important, is the social media aspect. And I'm a big advocate for LinkedIn. I think it's a great way to generally stay connected. It is a second CV if possible. You can actually, people will find you and they find all the information of your CV in there too. So making an effort to have a good LinkedIn profile with all the important information, I think, is always a good idea. It also doesn't take too long at the end of the day. And then making an effort to connect with people and reach out to people, I think, is always like a good idea because it can create opportunities at the end of the day. And that is what this is also about. It's like creating opportunities, staying connected, and going through this whole application process with as many possibilities as possible. If you're not connected already with me, check out my LinkedIn, Alexander Richter TD, and connect with me. Write me a message. Always better to connect with someone with a message. It just kind of feels more like, someone cares. And so, yeah, important here, besides having good profile, connecting with people, also be aware of your public image. So how you comment on other things, what you post about, makes a certain image of you, including other social media like Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And so it can be very positively, where you show additional work, details of your work. So people who are interested in you, maybe after interview, before an interview, can dive deeper into your whole role and understand where you are in life. But it can also, to some degree, be damaging if you, comment on things or are against specific things, and it's something that the studio values highly. I don't know, currently AI, or you hate programming, and so something like that. So there is a little bit of an element where it's very beneficial, but as all social media, it can also sometimes, take the brakes into your application because of certain elements. So just be aware that people are looking into your social media and that it can, benefit, but also like have a negative effect on your application at the end of the day. And finally, we come to the job listing. That's the one that we apply for. So we have to make sure that the role we are applying for is the right role for us. So do we apply for the role that makes sense to us? If we are an animator, should we apply for rigging TD, or is it like too far away from what we actually can do? So what this includes is the industry. Are you specialized in the industry? Maybe you are visual effects and you're applying for animation or games. which in theory can work, but obviously will be some friction or some knowledge that are maybe not there. Are we on the right level? If we are junior, we're applying for a senior role, lead role, that could be a little bit of a hard reach. And then reach in terms of like how high is the studio. If we are a beginner, we just basically start our first job and we are instantly applying for Pixar. It is possible, or Framestore or something. It is possible, but it's very unlikely. So it's always to make sure that we apply for the one that are realistic for us. We can still apply for the big ones, but it makes more sense to apply for something that we think will give us a chance, where we feel we are reaching not too far. But at the same time, there's opportunities like the Launchpad internship at Framestore, where we can try to, access that one and have a little bit of an element where we can get into a certain reach that we maybe usually will not if we just apply for the normal role. So that's the first part. The second part is to make sure that our application checks every box that we have, basically. So for example, if we look at the listing, we make sure that in CV, Showreel, and cover letter, we check the boxes that are in there. So if we check all the boxes, the only thing that matters to us at the end is to make sure that we prioritize correctly. So everything that is the most important in the listing is also the most on the first that we show. If we don't check all the boxes, like for example, we don't have a software that they're looking for, we don't know the skills about it. So the question that we can ask ourselves before we apply or go into an interview, can we take the time to learn the basics? So for example, if they ask for Katana, can we take a few hours and days to do some basic Katana tutorials to understand how it works, and then put Katana as a basic skill? And then in an interview, if they ask us, do we know about Katana? We say, yeah, all the basics we know about Katana, and much better than saying just no or don't have it at the end of the day. So that's the big question. And if we look, for example, at this listing at MPC for compositing technical director, and it can be even longer, maybe even double the size of all the extras. What we care about in this here is just this few elements. And these few elements are the one that we can check and make sure that we highlight in our resume, Showreel, and cover letter in social media. So the first one is degree in computer science, engineering, or technical VFX degree. Okay, make sure that we have that. Second one is we have a programming language like Python, C++, and Java. Probably Python is the more preferred one. So we have that in our skills, maybe show that in the Showreel, mention that in the cover letter. Linux, yeah, it's nice. We at least could be maybe asked, hey, in the interview, do you ever work in Linux? We can adjust to that one. And last but not least, we have Nuke, Maya, Katana, and Houdini. Houdini is a bonus. So we make sure that we know all the software. And if we don't know one of them, maybe we ask ourselves, should we spend the time to at least like open it, play around with it, do a tutorial with it, so we know the basics and we're not completely, flabbergasted if someone asks like, oh, do you know Houdini? Do you know Katana? We're like, oh yeah, we do basic things with that. And that's basically it. That's all the summary that I wanted to do. You can also find more details about what I just talked about, and even more in my blog, alexanderrichter.com/blog. There's also a section for that, career. We talk about even where to upload your Showreel. We had some interview with Amy Smith about the perfect Showreel and perfect CV and so on. So if you want to dive deeper into, find more details about it, check it out. That can be very helpful. Additionally, I have a coaching, because just talking about it and looking into all the application stuff is great, but it's also sometimes hard to translate that into your own work, into your own documents. So if you need help with that, personalized help with that, check out the successful application. It's alexanderrichter.com/application. If you need help with your personal application, you can find that basically there. And that's it from me, and that's it from the VFX job application. Hopefully that helps you to understand how the process works, how you can improve your next job application and create more job security, because even maybe if you have short time like contracts, you can still have enough like momentum to apply for the next job, find the next gig, and have at least continuous income and work assignments. Thank you very much for joining, and I will see you on our next TD Meetup. I welcome you to join us live and also watch the previous episodes, and I'll see you on our next TD Meetup.